Welcome to Talking Heads. David Attenborough and Steven Spielberg are big fans of this week's guest, and so will you be. You've probably seen his work and don't even know it. Wildlife cinematographer Jim Frazier has captured extraordinary footage for David Attenborough and invented a lens that revolutionised movie making. A cameraman, inventor, scientist and artist, Jim Frazier's star rose high above the Hollywood hills before crashing to earth in a Los Angeles courtroom. Jim, thanks for taking time out from behind the camera to join us on Talking Heads.
What a pleasure it is to be here and finally get to meet you, Peter.
You talk about a sixth sense being required in wildlife photography. What do you mean by having a sixth sense?
It's a very hard thing for me to describe, but it's having an affinity with animals per se, and it really doesn't matter what the animal is. But it's also knowing what an animal will do under a given set of circumstances.
Have you had this since being a kid?
Yes, very much so. I can be walking through the bush, and this is a good illustration of that sense. And I don't hear, see or smell anything, and all of a sudden the hair goes up on the back, and I look around and there's a snake. And it's very real. That's the only way I can describe it. It's like a forewarning.
You talk about 3 O's.
Yes.
Of wildlife filming. What are the 3 O's?
Opportunism, optimism, and oh my godism. And the oh my godism is a very scary part of wildlife filmmaking. You literally put yourself in often very dangerous situations.
So the oh my godism is about the dangers of it, yes, rather than those precious moments.
I guess one always chases those precious moments, but at the same time, you're also out there amongst it, and you have to be prepared for the bites and the stings and the getting eaten alive by whatever, and the dangers.
What are some of the joyous moments you've had?
Filming the rifle bird was one of them, because I sat in a hide for 2 months to get that sequence. Finally, in frustration, this female, at the end of a long day, came in almost in the dark, and it was a wham, bam, ma'am, thank you, all over in 5 or 10 seconds, and she went again, and we had the sequence.
So you could have been there for 2 months?
Yes.
Closed your eyes and missed the...
Yeah, and that 2 months was climbing up and down a rope ladder, 75 foot up into the hide. He was sitting on the top of a stump, and we would sit there from daylight till dark.
You're also an inventor. You're very innovative and have always been. You've always tinkered.
I guess from a very early age, in my era, you learn to make your own fun. And I used to make things and build things and pull clocks to bits and
That's right, as long as you can put them back together again.
No, I never put them back together, but it was good to see how they worked.
Can you fix my clock?
I've never really shied away from doing something that I wanted to do or achieve something that I wanted to achieve. You just do it.
There was a time when people who made natural history films used to think that if you wanted real drama, you'd have to go to Africa. And then along came Jim Frazier because he had extraordinary ingenuity in inventing lenses that made shots like this one possible. And the world of natural history films has never been quite the same since.
The real passion is persevering and getting some extraordinary behaviour on film and then showing the world, you know, where you just don't get enjoyment out of it, but millions of people do.
Stop!
My interest in wildlife goes right back to my early childhood. It stems from a cultivation by my father and mother with all things natural. My dad had an extraordinary understanding and a love of butterflies. He had amassed over the years a massive collection of Australian butterflies. He was an absolute godsend for me as a child. He showed me everything in the bush, and really he was my hero. Our family was somewhat eccentric because everyone else went to the football. We didn't. We preferred to go out into the bush. Mum, Dad, and myself and my sisters. And we had a ball just in the bush. That time of my life was extraordinary because I had the most amazing parents. I had an appalling experience at school. I guess I got the cane every day. So literally in secondary school, I failed school and I became a cabinet maker. My heart, though, was natural history. And in 1970, I was offered a job at the Australian Museum in Sydney as chief preparator. That was absolutely fantastic. But it also opened so many doors. Denzi Klein came to me. She heard that I knew a lot about natural history and she wanted my help to gain material to photograph for her books. And so Denzi was asked to make a film about insects and spiders, which she knew a lot about. But Denzi didn't have any experience with movie cameras at all. And so I stepped in and said, I would love to have a go. And that's where it started. And I guess that was a real learning curve because at that stage I also made every mistake in the book. I used to get film back that was black, white, scratched. And I thought, hell, this isn't so easy.
What about those leeches?
Par for course for me.
Absolute occupational.
Yeah.
Hazard.
Just something you put up with, yeah.
That photograph of your mother with you as an adolescent with your mother, was near a country road. And not all your memories of being with your parents by country roads were happy ones, were they?
One of the reasons I used to get off the beaten track because when I was young and had schoolmates, they'd all go past in their cars and yell out, "You loonies," and, you know, it reflected badly in a way on me. In fact, I wagged school for 3 weeks on end once, and those 3 weeks were spent in the bush. That's what I loved.
So you were a truant?
Total truant, yeah.
So you went into the bush to explore for animals. Did you bring them home?
Oh, all the time. I was surrounded by animals. I had pet kookaburras and hawks and much to my dad's horror. I had some ferrets at one stage. I had a pet fox, got into his
hen house,
literally,
really?
and sucked every bit of blood out of all his chooks, and he wasn't very happy about that. And then later on I had snake pits all over the backyard full of snakes, and that was me.
What about you as a boy? Were you a loner?
A little bit, yeah. Although I had a couple of good mates that tagged along, and fortunately one day I was glad I had one of those mates with me because I got squirted in the eye with tiger snake antivenin and with venom.
As a kid?
As a kid. I think I'd have been blind to this day, and of course that's my camera eye, and I'm always very thankful to him for getting me back there.
Each of the jobs you took on seemed like the next step towards what you eventually were to do. What did the job then as chief preparator, which I presume means preparing exhibitions and preparing displays.
Yes.
How does that link to being a good wildlife photographer?
You need lots of other skills. You need technical skills to do wildlife stuff. You have to build sets, natural sets. You have to be familiar. For instance, when I built something to film the underground behaviour of bulldog ants, you need to have a knowledge of what that nest is like underground, and then how to get lenses in there and film all this wonderful behaviour that they actually have. The first documentary we made was purely about spiders.
Great, go.
And that came to the attention of people at the BBC who contacted us and said, look, we're doing this big series called Life on Earth with David Attenborough. And I said at the time, who the hell's David Attenborough? We developed an extraordinary relationship with David Attenborough. We first filmed for him Life on Earth, followed by The Living Planet, and then on to Trials of Life. This is footage I shot of the amazing symbiotic relationship of a moth and the yucca plant. I had to go around and cut a petal out of the side of each flower, and when the moth flies in, it's a black moth, which was great because it contrasted against the white flower, and nobody had ever filmed this. There are two techniques used widely filming wildlife. One is time-lapse photography and the other is high-speed photography. These butterflies we're looking at here I shot in Borneo with a high-speed camera we can better see the action of a fast-moving butterfly by slowing it down. It goes back to my early childhood with my dad, but I wanted to do something significant with butterflies. Time-lapse photography is great for flowers. One of the biggest challenges we faced in The Living Planet was to film the largest flower in the world, called Frazier. This flower takes 3 or 4 days to open. It's so huge. And in order to film that, you can't have day, night coming and going. So we had to enclose it in a big black tent and artificially light it so that it was seamless. We achieved this shot with a very special lens called an endoscope, which doctors use. This caterpillar works its way into the weaver ants, quite vicious little green ants, and they feed on the larvae of these ants. And that was one of the hardest jobs I've ever done in my life. Constant biting of the ants, and I developed barriers on the lenses so they couldn't get on the camera, because if they did, they would get into your eyes and you would get formic acid squirts in your eyes and bites.
The caterpillar snatches a grub, pulls it under the shield, and then, secure beneath its armour, slowly eats it.
It's true to say that a lot of filmmaking, in essence, is special effects. 70% of wildlife filmmaking is not necessarily in the wild, it's indoors. The only way you can film a lot of it is to bring it indoors under controlled lighting where there's no wind, no sound, and get all the action on film in a pristine manner.
I can see it in the job ad, must be prepared to take formic acid in the eyes.
Absolutely, yeah. and everywhere else. I've had them up my nose. Oh, gee, that is terrible.
How much do you interfere?
A lot. And you know
that's not cheating.
No, it's not cheating, but it can be fatal. Too much interference. You literally got to set it up and walk away. Interference can be dangerous.
You had a moment with the birth of a koala. That was unique. No one had filmed it, had they, before?
That's right. A lot of people had tried, and that was probably my greatest disaster.
Don't mean to mention it, Lord.
No, the koala was fine. Nobody had picked up the little signs that I instantly read, and all it did was flick its ears, just ever so slightly.
My dad used to be able to do that.
Yeah, well, I can't. But this was the signal that the koala, to me, was under stress, and I knew the birth was either happening or very imminent. And I reached in and just pushed the leg slightly aside, and there it was. And I actually filmed this. I just instinctively knew what was happening. And the floor was sand. When I ran out of film on the first magazine, I picked up this magazine, put it in, and went on filming. Never thought about sand in the gate. And when we got the film back, I was in tears. I was literally in tears.
On the other hand, you've also filmed IVF, human IVF. What was your experience with that?
I think the worst thing that really affected me on that was that he wanted shots of a fetus, and so I was delivered this fetus on a tray, literally, still alive, and it was a Down syndrome at 16 weeks old. And I had to strip the amniotic sac off it myself. I knew what I had to do, and I knew I had to get it down to the final membrane, but just doing that and feeling that fetus in my hands and fingers still alive, it had a vast impact on me mentally. And I can't watch that film now. I can't listen to the music. I break into tears. It just still affects me to this day. You need to be really fit to film wildlife. One day you can be in water up to your neck. The next day you can be climbing trees. But I guess climbing rope ladders is some of the most strenuous of all work. I've lost mates who have fallen out of trees filming wildlife and killed themselves. And I've filmed at heights as high as 110 feet, and I know that because we had a 100-foot rope ladder and we had to climb the last 10 feet into the platform. That's where you have to be to get the shots, and it's hard work to get there.
Now, this particular tree we're putting a hide in at the moment, it's called a kadagi, one of those really brittle gums. And some of these things, like this one, will snap just like a carrot, and they don't give you any warning, they just break.
One of the most extraordinary experiences I've had filming wildlife was for the ABC filming a mice plague. And the particular shot I wanted was a low-angle shot. All I saw was a sea of mice, and they all ran under me. And then there were so many mice under me, thousands, that I was floating around on the ground on a sea of mice.
That footage of the mice is completely remarkable. I well remember it.
It was a remarkable experience filming it.
There's a certain Alfred Hitchcock moment about all of that, isn't there?
There is, yeah. And they were down my shirt and into my private parts and, you know.
Awesome.
It was an experience.
In terms of your lifetime of involvement with nature, Steve Irwin, was he just unlucky?
My opinion there is, I can identify with Steve. There is a point with some animals. You can do something with an animal a dozen times, 100 times. There's always an individual that does it differently, and that's how nature survives. And I've never said anything about this, but this has been my opinion, and knowing how Steve also had that way of being able to read animals and a sixth sense with them, I figure he was just unlucky on the day with an individual animal that did something different.
When have you had that experience?
A few times. I can remember I'm sitting out in the desert filming little wolf spiders. They would close their lid and slam the door shut in your face. There was this one spider, and you get individualism in all sorts of animals, who, when I waved my hand over to get him closing the lid and going down the hole, he forgot to close the lid. And there was this pregnant pause for a while, and he came back up and slammed the lid shut. And I sat there and I laughed. I'm out on my own, crying with laughter in the desert. And I knew I had a little prize sequence. From the outset of filming wildlife, the limitations were the lenses themselves. I spent hundreds of hours looking through a viewfinder. I had a board with plasticine on it, and I would stick these individual optics in it. And I went on to invent and develop a lens that put everything into focus. I started doing all these amazing shots. I guess the first big job that I'd used these lenses on was a film called Cane Toads, An Unnatural History.
You do need to get a bit of a shot in the arm visually. And we discussed this with Jim, and Jim said, well, as a matter of fact, I've got a new lens. I have just invented a lens. The effect is that you can take a small insect and have it close to the camera lens so that it fills the screen. And yet, from the back, going right the way through, back to the hills in the background, it's all completely tightly in focus.
For David Attenborough, I was able to film a caterpillar with ants in the foreground and David in the background. And this was a whole new way of shooting, and the BBC used it to great advantage.
But see how they're treating this one. As we came out, one of the girls said, I don't think I'll emigrate to Australia. Do you know they have caterpillars there that are 4 feet long? but that's a measure of how convincing Jim's camera work is.
Now, I can't show you how this shot is done. As David Attenborough said, it is a secret. But take it from me, what you can see is real and actual. And here's the spider to prove it.
When Panavision became interested in my optical discoveries, it became known as the Panavision Frazier lens. It was used by Dean Semler, and Steven Spielberg used it in Jurassic Park. And it was also used in a lot of commercials.
Blended with generations of expertise to make fresh.
That lens produced a number of awards, including a technical Oscar and an Emmy. But Several lenses came out in the States that were dead knockoffs, and that's where the trouble started. A big court case ensued. They actually won the case, but I know in my heart I invented the lens. Mentally and emotionally, it was the most terrible time for my wife and myself. It looked like we were going to have to sell our place here and go live in a caravan park.
You didn't really come to lens invention from a technical background, and in fact the CSIRO, a scientist there, said, don't be silly.
Yeah, he said it couldn't be done. And had I been a scientist, I think I would have given up. I have to be so careful now because I've been given an honorary doctorate, so...
Did they give you an honorary doctorate to keep you quiet, did they?
Maybe. No, well...
Actually, you have said that a knowledge of physics would have been a disadvantage in this case.
Yeah, because I would have instinctively dismissed any possibility of it, and this is the difference. It's actually within the known optics framework. It just happens to be in an area that most scientists don't go because they consider it an area of imperfect optics. Well, what I discovered was an area in there that produced perfect optics inside the imperfect optics. And the rest is history now.
This is surely proof that a man needs a shed.
Absolutely, yeah, and I always had a good shed.
Achieving an Oscar for technical contribution and an Emmy must have made you feel literally on top of the world.
Yeah, and I've received so many awards I've lost track of them. They were the two big ones, of course.
Well, against that pinnacle is the depth that came with this court case, where Panavision, with whom you actually had a business deal, didn't support the litigation that you needed to actually enter.
That's correct. The people who infringed had lots of money, and they had $6 million litigation insurance and spent every cent of it to put me away, and they did, effectively.
Well, apart from all the financial aspects of this was a huge blow to you psychologically, obviously.
Both financially and psychologically, yeah. I was literally put down, and it was during that stage that I met one of the most amazing human beings in my entire life who saw what was happening to me, a guy called Mark Montgomery. Said, I'm going to do something about this. And I said, oh yeah, bull dust. And that was the frame of mind I was in. That guy is still with me today. He's my biggest hero. He has pulled me out of that situation and raised money to help me and my family.
And also in a business partnership with him, you've got back into optics.
Yes, and he encouraged me to have another go. I'm now back on track with a whole new lens system. The new lens is a simpler way to put everything in focus. It has made a major impact into the latest techniques for iris recognition and the security industry. For cinematography, one of the assets is that you'll be able to stick this lens straight under the water. One of the things about being a wildlife cinematographer is travel, and I've seen the degradation environmentally on a mega scale that most people never see.
What's that one called?
That's an Australian birdwing. So what's the difference between that one and that one?
I think they're male and female.
You're absolutely right, mate. I'm stimulated in a way by my own grandchildren because I don't see a bright future for them. I've been working on a concept called Symphony of the Earth. I want to send 15 wildlife camera teams around the world filming animals making sounds to formulate a whole new genre of music. The lyrics of the songs will be delivering very powerful messages of the environmental degradation that's happening on a global scale. I've never been one to balk at a difficult situation. And so when you face all these difficulties, you've got to get in and have a go.
Now, just in case people think you're not busy enough, you've developed a form as an entertainment for yourself initially of crystal art photography.
That was the other thing I used to do in winter times when there was little else to do. I just read this article on creating special effects under the microscope by mixing chemicals together. I thought, wow, that is fantastic. 30 years later, I developed it into an art form.
And it's not just a personal interest. I mean, a lot of Oprah Winfrey is one of those who has some of this work.
There's a number of people all over
Hillary
the world.
Clinton?
Yeah, Hillary Clinton has one. I'm quite proud of that.
You still get out of bed with a sense of wonderment and excitement?
Every day. Lovely. Now, the other day, there's always something happening. I've got a number of bantams at home. We have not got a rooster. One of them started crowing like a rooster the other day. It is a hen. Now, is she attracting a male? I've never heard of it before. What is the strategy going on here?
We'll leave people to ponder on that one.
Okay.
Jim, it's been great talking to you. Thanks for coming on Talking
And to you
Heads.
too. Thank you.